Welcome to the Big Life Podcast, where dreams aren't just imagined, they're built brick by brick, belief by belief. Hosted by Neal Oates Jr. and Robin Lewis, this show is your invitation to discover your amazing capabilities, invest in your growth, and unleash your potential in ways you've only dreamed of. Join Neal and Robin as they dive deep into stories, insights, and tools designed to inspire you to show up big, live intentionally, and give yourself away for the betterment of those around you. Get ready to rise to what you're truly worthy of. The Big Life starts now.
Neal, I'll be honest, man. Rest is one of the hardest things for me. I sit down and I think, when I'm resting, man, I should be working right now. Do you ever feel that?
Robin, that's me, right? We live in this hustle culture that we've talked about it before, grind, grind, grind. But here's what most people don't realize, that hustle without rest doesn't build momentum, it builds burnout. So I can't wait to see where this conversation goes today, Rob.
And that's the irony of it, man. When I finally do slow down, I find myself actually sharper and more focused. It's almost like rest is a secret productivity hack that nobody wants to admit. You know what I mean?
Now, Robin, we say it's a secret and is hidden in plain sight, right? But it has been pushed down. And I would like for us, as we walk through this, I know you and I, we're going to share maybe some personal stories. We might share some real life examples, but I really want our audience to take hold of especially these key points that we're going to share. And so I'm going to jump right in, Robin, with maybe why you and I feel like even when we're resting, we're supposed to be working or doing something. And key point number one is that rest is not laziness, it's preparation. Now, if you're like me, Robin, I know oftentimes we've been taught to hustle, grind, go, do more, create, produce. But here's what I want the audience to hear, that rest is not laziness, it's preparation. Think about athletes, ladies and gentlemen. They train hard, but the real growth happens in recovery. Muscles are rebuilt when they rest. And the wild thing is the same with us as leaders. It's the same with us. So we must, yes, push hard, work, but the growth happens when we are recovering.
And that is so true, Neal. I when I was building my business in the early days, I remember I thought if I just outworked everybody, I'd win. That's all I needed to do was to just outwork everybody. And there is some truth to that, right? You got to put the work in. And for a while, I did sort of, outwork everybody. And, I was winning, but then I hit a wall, man. That's the reality. I wasn't at my best because I wasn't giving myself the space to recharge. And so it affected me. I was outworking myself to a point where I got to a place where I didn't have all that I needed in order to continue pushing through like I was.
And Robin, I'm willing to bet that what I'm going to say apply to you because I've been right there with you. And this is not a great time when I say that I've been right there with you, but the people around us can tell. Right? Tired leaders. And if you're here with us on the Big Life Podcast, we know that you're leading in some capacity, but tired leaders make tired teams, right? But what about rested leaders? Rested leaders give everyone permission to bring their best. There is this quote that I love, Robin, and it says, rest doesn't take you out of the game. It prepares you to play at your best. So once again, rest doesn't take you out of the game. And that's what we often think, right? I'm out of the game. I need to get back in. Rest doesn't take you out of the game. It prepares you to play at your best. What do you have for us, Robin?
I like that. That's so good. And then the second point we want to touch on here is that rest gives clarity and creativity. So rest allows us to be more creative, and rest allows us to be more clear, more focused, if you will. Some of my best ideas haven't come sitting at a desk. They've come on a walk or sometimes in the shower, Neal. Some of my best ideas, actually, folks, if I can be honest, come to me while I'm in the shower. or maybe when I've stepped away from the noise, I'm at the beach or at the park or, somewhere just off course, off of what the normal day-to-day stuff is. And that's where I get some of my best thinking.
Absolutely. And so, Robin, the same is true for me, right? So I get clarity after a good night's sleep, and we'll talk about that here, I'm sure, a little later. Well, I'm just going to go ahead and jump in on that. I have been going, Robin, I've been running, you know this. And so I've been just trying to operate and trying to outwork everyone. We have some ambitious goals. But then I came to a point where I said, well, yes, I'm doing okay, but I believe that if I slow down, if I rest, I might be able to get that clarity that will allow me to be more creative. And what I found is that after a good night's sleep or after sitting in silence for about 10 minutes, it's like our minds need space to breathe before ideas can show up. So as I slow down from all the hustle, Robin, I broke out my moleskin, what I call my money book, and I slowed down and I rested. And the next thing I know, the creative energy, those juices started flowing and ideas started coming in my head. Great ideas that might not be now ideas, but I was able to capture those. And I probably would have missed those great ideas if I wouldn't have slowed down and taken 10, 15 minutes to rest.
It's so true, man. I've been challenged recently to, get back into the rhythm of taking a day of rest. That's why God built rest into creation itself, right? 6 days of work and 1 day of rest. And he didn't only just establish that, but he actually was the example of that, right? God himself took a day of rest. And, I don't think it was because he per se needed the rest,
Right?
but I think it's more about the creativity and the fact that when we do, I think a couple of things take place. One is that we're recognizing that there is more to it than just going at it all the time. And there is somebody else at work, like you and I. We come from a place of faith. I think what it does for me is it anchors my belief in the fact that God is with me and that God is still in control. And that really and truly, you've heard the saying, 1 day in his court is like 1,000 elsewhere.
Yeah.
The idea there is that it really allows me to kind of come back and recognize it's not about Robin. And so, I believe that he put that rhythm in our life for that reason. And when we break that rhythm, we break ourselves.
Ouch.
Yeah. There's a quote that I heard the other day. It says, when your mind is rested, your vision expands. When your mind is rested, your vision expands.
Robin, here's what I know. I know that someone is listening to us right now, and they have agreed with everything we've said so far, but yet and still, they're like, but I don't have time to rest. If I rest, because then we also will quote that part in the Bible, a little rest, a little folding of the hands, and then next thing you know, the weeds have overtaken the garden type deal, right?
Yeah.
But it is important. And here's what I love that you just mentioned. Man, the creator of the universe showed us. He gave us the formula. And so we could try to go against the ultimate creator, our Father's rhythm. But then, like you said, we're going to break ourselves. And I don't think we intentionally do that on a daily basis. But regardless of the intention, the action is the same. And therefore, the result must be the same. And so and the reason why I mentioned some people are saying, yes, Neil, yes, Robin, I agree with the first 2 points. It's because of point number 3. Rest is a discipline, not a luxury, right? Rest is a discipline, not a luxury. Here's what I had to learn. A rest isn't a reward you get at the end of your work. It's part of the work itself. It's not something that you say, well, when I get there, Rob, you and I, business owners, entrepreneurs, husbands, fathers, how many times have we been guilty of that? When we get here, when we accomplish this, once we finish doing blank, we will rest. But the hard lesson that I have learned, and I'm willing to bet my friend and co-host Robin has learned as well, is that we're never going to be finished, right? It's just our drive, our makeup. But then, as you mentioned, are we willing to put that faith in God and someone else, that even in our lack of doing, our lack of execution, that He will pick up and carry the rest, or that He will make it work? So it's part of the work itself. It is not a luxury.
I love that. Did you hear that, folks? It's part of the work itself. I don't think I've ever heard that before, Neil. That is so powerful. And
Come
so
on,
it's
sir.
you're putting a picture to this idea of that it's a discipline, not a luxury. So it's a part of the work. So rest is something that it's a part of working, and it enhances working. That's the point of our message today. And I used to feel guilty taking time off. That's the truth. I felt like I was letting somebody down, or I was letting myself down, like I had to earn it. You know what I mean, Neil? And now I think if I don't schedule rest, I'm actually sabotaging my future self. If I don't take the rest, like I am making it harder. I am lessening who I can be and what I can do. And so it's become a necessary part of who I am and what I do now.
And so for me to hear you say that you used to be this way, right? Because unfortunately, I'm going to say fortunately, I have the Robin Lewis that I've come to know, love, and respect. You, like we always say, slow down, rest, reflect, right? And so that's what I know you as and for. But you mentioned earlier here in this episode how even you have been challenged to get back to that rhythm, back to that space of resting, reflecting, being creative, gaining clarity. And so just in that, even before we continue, I want to ask you, how did you receive, Robin? Because you were challenged to, hey, get back to resting. And this is where I know you've just gone on a resting period, but even in that, you probably gained some clarity. How did you receive the challenge of, hey, get back to the good stuff, get back to the rest? Was there humility in that? Was there pride? Was there ego? Was there a little bit of dissent? Like, what do you mean? I can't rest any more than I already have. How did you receive that, Robin?
Yeah, it's I must say, first of all, Neil, that it's I don't want it to sound like I have conquered this, there,
Hmm.
because like you said, like you and I, we get after it, right? We're working, right? We are putting a lot of time in, and so, and which I believe is necessary as well. And so
Yes.
that's why we have to really be clear about what we're sharing here, folks. The point is that if that's, you've heard the old saying, all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. I think that's how it went. I haven't
Yep.
recited that one for a long time. That's more about the point. And so, Neil, I say that to say this. I still have to be very careful about it. There are times where what will happen to me is that I will be so busy, so much going after it, that I miss some of the specific time of rest that I typically have built into my days,
Hmm.
right? And so there are times where I allow myself to get so busy that I don't have that margin built in. And then I start to feel it. I can actually feel it now. I know that I'm not operating at my best, because I've just been going and going and going and going. So what has happened to me? I can't tell you the point in time to answer your question when the actual change came about. I think it's more about hearing the like what we're sharing with our listeners today. It's hearing that being taught by my mentors and guides over the years, and recognizing that
Yeah.
that's something that I needed to try to start applying to my life to see how that goes. And then trying to also, I'm very big on reflection, and that's something that I learned. I think the main person that's spoken into my life in that regard is John Maxwell, by the way. But Rick Warren also teaches this. He teaches about having, and he shows this in the Bible, how the early the Jewish people, the Jewish nation, that they had festivals and different times of rest that was automatically built in. They had rhythms of rest, and Rick Warren teaches that to for us to engage in rhythms of rest in our lives. So I think it's a combination of hearing that and then trying to start applying it to my life. And the more that I did it is the more that I recognized the benefit of doing it. And so I started trying to be even more intentional about doing that. You mentioned,
Good stuff.
Neil just mentioned we took a break. We just came back from a little bit of a vacation, which, by the way, between you and I, oh, well, I'm putting it out there now, aren't I? It was a little bit too long. It was a little bit too long to be away, to the point where it kind of got me off of my momentum. I had a momentum going before I went on vacation, and we went for a little bit too long this time around, Neil. And just being transparent with you, to where it's taken me a little time to actually get back into my routine.
Mhm.
And but that's one of the things that over years I was that guy that I didn't take vacations,
You took none.
going and not stopping to take time for that. And I recognized that that was not a good thing, and it wasn't living into the values that I claimed that I had, for
Yeah.
example. And so yes, I started creating a rhythm of that now in my life. And yes, I can't tell you the wonders that that does for me, taking time away. In addition to being able to spend good time with family and learning, usually I'm going somewhere that I haven't been before, and you get to learn people and cultures and, different things like that. It always gives me the time too to sort of just refresh my mind. And a lot of times, thoughts, ideas, maybe revisions of things come to mind that helps me when I get back to actually apply and make what I do that much better.
And so here's what I love that you just mentioned, Robin, that it's a time for you to reconnect. And it's not just about you. And that's what I want to continue with. Our families notice when we are not rested, right? They also notice when we are rested. When I'm rested, I'm more present. I'm able to be where my feet are. I'm more patient. And for our family individuals in here, when you know that if you're doing life with someone, I don't care how awesome they are, it is going to require patience. So the more rested I am, the more present I am, the more patient I am. And here's what I love about this idea and this thing called rest is that it doesn't just bless me, it blesses everyone around me. And so I've had to learn that rest isn't selfish, it's stewardship. And if I don't steward my energy, my attention, my creativity or my clarity the right way, then those around me are going to be negatively impacted. And here's the hard part of that. Typically, the ones who are going to be impacted the most by our lack of rest or poor stewardship of our energy audience are going to be those who are closest to us, the ones we care the most about, the ones that we love, the ones who have
So
the
true.
that we have the greatest impact on what's going to happen for days, years, or generations to come. So that's why rest is so important.
That's so true, brother. I think of times where I'm not my best self, and oftentimes my family are the ones who get the brunt of that, right?
Come on.
So yeah, so good. Sir, so a key, the next point we want to touch on here is that we want to talk about practical rhythms of rest. I kind of mentioned Rick Warren talking about this, but we're talking about daily. You can have short pauses, maybe walks, prayers, reflection. We have weekly rhythms, unplugging. We talked earlier about the Sabbath, right? No work, family time, sort of focusing on God. And then we have yearly. You have yearly retreats, vacations, renewal days. We have yearly times of reflection, if you will. And for
So,
me,
so
just
Ro- Robin, right there, before you go any further, you talked about, you gave us ideas for daily, weekly, yearly. All of those sound fantastic, right? But how many times, even in our short pauses, our walks, our unplugging, our Sabbath, our vacations, are we still not resting during those times, right? And so the moment you say that and you give ideas, I'm like, yay. But then we often hear of the person who goes on vacation, and what do we come back and say? I need a vacation from my vacation, right? Or they have time off and they were like, man, I would have rather been at work. I'm like, well, you must have done that thing called rest wrong if you would have rather been at work. First of all, if I'm an employer and if I hear one of my employees say that, I'm like, I need to look at your work report and see what kind of work you're doing if you'd rather be here than resting. So I love all of those daily, weekly, and annual or yearly times. And so I'm just curious how that has, or what has been your experience with that, Robin. So go ahead.
Yeah, that's so good. I'm glad you mentioned it, and that's why we're bringing it up to you, our audience, our listeners today. It's very easy for us to take time. I have there is an alarm that I set on my phone that goes off 3 times of the day, and if I'm not careful, I can just shut it off and not
Mm-hmm.
really do what I intended to do with that alarm.
Yeah.
And so it's very easy to do what you just said, Neil, where we set these times, but then we don't have we really intentionally used it the way we intended. And a lot of times we don't. I don't. And so but it's important for us to be intentional about making it happen. And so blocking 15 minutes between meetings has changed my energy, right? And that's rest. Sometimes, when you go from one meeting to the other, to the other, to the other, it's I've learned, in fact, I learned this from Chris Robinson, to just set that little buffer time in between meetings. And that time helps me to catch up sometimes. It allows me to kind of just take pause and take a look at where I've been, where I'm going, just kind of just reflect on, what I've done and what I've yet to do today. And it allows me to kind of just have a sense of calm, about the day and about what I'm doing.
So, Robin, you talk about that buffer time, and this is something I learned when I was working outside of the home, but it's more importantly now that most of my work is done here at home with my wife, who also works remotely. Is that buffer time between work and then coming home, even though we're working from home, is so important because if I'm not careful, I can take that work energy, I can take that last call, whether it be good or bad, into our home, and that energy might be bad. It might be distracting. It might be dismissive energy where I'm so focused on me and what has happened, good or bad. If I don't take that 15, 20 minutes to, okay, rest, relax, clear my mind, shut the store down here at the office, and then walk out into the rest of the home, then that really can have that impact and my family can feel it, right? My wife, my son, they can feel that. So for me, it's boundaries, right? I know you talk about that 15-minute time to just stop, pause between meetings, but for me, it's boundaries. I don't let my phone be the first and last thing I see every day. This is one thing that Darren Hardy was big on. He said, I think it was almost 70+% of married people, the first thing they touch in the morning is their phone. And he says, man, until my phone can start doing for me what my wife can do, I'm not touching my phone first, right? And so I think that so many of us, we have become attached to things or bad routines because we talk about these rhythms for rest. There are also rhythms that are going to lead to frustration, burnout, and the such. So I think that having boundaries set up in place are going to be fantastic for us. So, Robin, I want to jump really quickly to ask you a question because our conversation has sparked this idea for me or some ideas. When was a time that rest actually gave you a breakthrough that you weren't looking for? Is there one that just jumps out at you when you're like, man, I wasn't even looking for this thing, but because I took the time to slow down and actually rest, I was able to get clarity. I was able to be creative. Has that ever happened for you?
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I have to stop to think about it, but this happens so many times. I just kind of have to find out. I just thought of one, for example. I remember a time that, this actually, so this goes back a couple of years ago, so it's not like this week, but I'll give it some more thought to come with something more recent in a moment. But I remember I was having this really hard time with a decision that I had to make with a person at work. So this was somebody that worked with our team, and I really I didn't know what to do. and I tried different things. And I remember, Neil, I was actually was praying about it. I stopped and I was praying. And, in that time of rest, it was in the morning. It was at my home office where I am right now. So it actually comes back to me alive like it was yesterday. And I remember something just popped in my mind, and I wasn't sure about the thought, to be honest with you, but I trusted it and I acted on it. And at least I shouldn't say it like I just went and took action like that, but I moved in that direction of what the thought was suggesting. And it turned out to be a brilliant thought, and I recognize it even more looking back after dealing with that situation. I recognize how, to be honest with you, divine of a thought that it
Yeah.
was. And the point there is that, so if I don't take the time to slow down and really be sensitive to that type of thought, it can very easily be shared and I not catch it. If I
Hmm.
didn't stop to actually rest, if I just kept trying to attack the problem and think, well, find a way that Robin was going to make this happen, I wouldn't have heard this. I wouldn't have gone in this direction. And so that's an example that comes to my mind, sir.
Good stuff. Thank you for
It's good to
sharing
be
that,
asking
Robin.
each other stuff like this, I'd like to ask you, like, what happens to you when you don't rest, Neil? If we can just be transparent with our listeners today, what happens when you don't get rest?
So I always think about the Incredible Hulk, right? You know how he says that you wouldn't like me when I'm angry. So you don't like me when I am burned out, when I am unrested. Well, here's why. I don't like myself when I don't get rest. And so that shows itself in a couple of ways. So when I'm not rested, one, I let my guard down, and the worst things that I could think about myself, I say them on repeat, right? When I don't get rest, I become my own worst enemy. Right, because we know that there's a battle in the mind. There's a spiritual battle going on, and so when I'm not rested, I can't keep my hands up. I can't keep my guard up. When I'm not rested, Robin, I find myself going to things and going to places, and it might be social media, it could be YouTube, whatever it is, that are going to put negative inputs into my life. But here's what happens most of the time when I'm not rested. When I'm not rested, I don't have the energy to focus on the positive future. I always seem my default, and ladies and gentlemen, even those of you who know Neil, my default still goes back to the failures, the heartaches, the heartbreaks, and the challenges that are still before me that might seem bigger than they really are. And so when I'm not rested, Robin, I don't see that future self. I don't see the positives. It's easier to join the mediocre many or the masses and just be negative about everything. So that's why I've learned, and my wife has reminded me, my son as well, friends such as you, Neil, now might be a time for you to get rest. And so I say that the best visual representation is how we have those Snickers commercials. You're
Yes,
not
you made
yourself.
me think of that.
You're not yourself when you're hungry. So I'm
Yeah,
not myself when I'm tired. Right.
yeah.
And it could be a
So,
physical fatigue, mental, spiritual, but I have people, Robin being one of them. Hey, brother, I see you're running hard. When was the last time you rested? I don't have time to rest. I'm trying to conquer the world. And be like, okay, yeah, now you definitely need to rest. And so I think but that comes with self awareness. And it also comes with having people in my life who are saying, yeah, sir, you do we need a nap? Yes, we do. We need a nap. And so it's one of those things where I have come to appreciate and understand the need for me to get rested because I'm not my best self. I'm not myself when I'm tired, Robin.
yeah, I like that, Neil. Why I like that is because, for me, we might not even realize it. That's the point that I'm getting from what you just said, is that you're aware enough to recognize that sometimes we might be acting that way and not realizing that we need rest. We might be acting that way And maybe we might even be harder on ourselves because we can't get out of that funk that we get in. And we might not realize that it's rest that we
Yeah.
needed to begin with. That's so good. And that's eye opening, I think, for somebody listening to us today. So, Neil, you know how we are. We like to give practical takeaways. So let's talk about some practical things that our listeners can take away from this discussion today.
Absolutely.
Um,
So,
one I would like to suggest is for our listeners to take rest like an appointment with your future self. So you're actually putting rest as an appointment in your calendar ahead
mhm.
of time. You're scheduling it like you would schedule an appointment with your best client, but you're scheduling this appointment with your future self.
And here's why I like that as the very first practical takeaway, Robin, is because it's going to help with the one that I challenge or that challenges me and that I struggle with is that if you feel guilty about resting, remember, you're building capacity for tomorrow. And if we've already scheduled that appointment, now we don't have to say, I'm being lazy, I'm taking too much time off. It's I'm staying true to myself, to my future self. And now I'm building capacity so that whenever tomorrow comes, I will be in a position to win, to actually execute, to have clarity, and to be creative. So I love the idea because many of us, high achievers who are striving after the big life, guilt is that enemy that will come in and say, you don't have time to rest. There's too much to do. But if it's on our calendar, if we schedule that appointment, now we'll understand that we really are building room and that margin for us to grow.
Yes, sir. And the other one that I want to share is you just brought it to my mind is that pay attention to signals, right? If you're getting irritable or there's a lack of focus or constant fatigue, those aren't necessarily productivity issues. They could be rest issues, as Neil so brilliantly said. So pay attention to those signals and recognize that it could be signaling to you that you need to rest.
Man, so Robin, I want to tell you that this has been absolutely fantastic episode so far. But as we've gone with some key takeaways and now some practical items that we can do, as always, we would not be showing you all love as our audience and listeners if we did not issue a challenge that Robin and I are also going to take up. So here's the challenge that we have for you after listening to this episode. Don't see rest as an interruption to your success. You're like, well, Neil, what kind of challenge is that? Well, you are an achiever. You are a producer. You are a striver, someone who goes after big things. So don't see rest as an interruption to your success. See it as an investment in your success. So our challenge is maybe just change the relationship that we have with rest.
Yes. And we're going to leave you with this thought, right? What would change if you treated rest as seriously as you treat work? What would change if you treated rest as seriously as you treated work? And we want you to try that this week. Protect your rest and watch how it fuels your growth. And so that's our additional challenge for you today is treat rest as you would work and protect it this week. And we'd love to hear from you. Let us know. Maybe there is maybe there's somebody listening today that you're going to take that challenge and you're going to protect your rest this week. And after doing so, we want to hear from you. How did it go? Right. So you can leave a note in the show. You can DM us. You can reach out to us in several different ways, and let us know. Let us know how that has fueled your growth.
So while Robin and I are waiting to hear from you about your relationship with rest, waiting to hear some victories or some experiences that you've had after listening to this episode, we want to remind you, as we always do. First, even before we go there, Robin, I want to say thank you. It has been good to get on here with you, have this conversation about a thing that we know has been a challenge at time for both of us and something something that we're still trying to figure out and get done the right way. You all heard Robin say, yes, they rested, but maybe they rested too long, right? The vacation. But then on the other side, this is coming from a man who never took any vacation and who was like, vacations are for wimps, right? Maybe we didn't say that, but we had that hustle thing in us. So we want to remind you that we love you. God loves you. There's nothing you can do about it. And until the next time we see you or you see us, we're right there with you. Peace.
Peace.